Okay, and we are recording. Um, so thank you everyone for joining us for a series of Lunch and Learns. I know that it was advertised that today we were going to learn about green screen effects on the iPad. However, as you are all too well familiar with 4H, sometimes you have to pivot last minute. And that is exactly what we're doing right now. So I am so sorry to those of you who were looking forward to making some cool effects with green screens, but today we are actually going to learn about the basics of coding with Karel the dog using an interface called CODE. Um, Once again, this was a last minute pivot. So you're still going to learn a lot. I hope that you get a lot out of it. And next month, we are going to learn about green screen effects. Um, so the objectives of today are to learn the basics of coding, to work within the CodeHS environment, and to see how we can apply that environment using our iPads and other Apple technology. Um, so really quick, CodeHS is an open source coding interface. And what I mean by open source is that anyone can access it. It is open to anyone. You do not need a separate compiler and a separate work environment. It's all in one. It is free to use, and anyone who has internet access can access it on a desktop computer, on a laptop, on an iPad, or on a cell phone. So it is extremely useful for different applications of programming that you might have. So Karel the dog is this little dog we see right here, and this is Karel's environment. Karel's environment is a grid. And so Karel can move around the grid, but Karel only knows 4 commands. Karel knows how to move, Karel knows how to turn left, Karel knows how to put a ball, and Karel knows how to take ball. Now, these 4 commands are the only commands that Karel knows how to use, and they are an introductory level way to get kids to learn how to code, but mostly to think about coding and the ways in which logic is developed within a computer science. So really quick, I want to talk to you about what each one of these commands does. Move moves Karel 1 point over in the grid in the direction that Karel is facing. So the way in which Karel is facing right now is Karel is looking to the right. So if we were to say move, Karel Karel would move 1 spot over to the right. When we say turn left, all that does is it turns Karel 90 degrees. So if we were to say turn left at this point, Karel would then be facing up. And then for put ball, Karel would put down a tennis ball. And for take ball, Karel would take a tennis ball if the tennis ball is already in that grid point. What we're going to do now is I want us to work with Karel for a little bit. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go onto a link that Jenny is going to put in the chat in just a little bit, or you can also scan the QR code that I have coming up in the next slide. And we're going to work on 4 different challenges. So our first challenge is our first coding program. So we're going to start off all the way at the bottom left, and we're going to end over here while with no more balls on the screen. Then we're going to build a little short stack where we're going to put down 2 balls. Then we're going to make a tower. And finally, if we get there, we're going to build a pyramid with all of these tennis balls. When you click on the link, you will see that there is a ribbon at the bottom. We are only working on the pencils. Now, one cool thing about CodeHS is that this is, if you as an educator are not very familiar with coding, this helps you out. So there are introductory videos in the video icon that go through everything that I'm explaining to you right now, even more so in detail. It also has comprehension quizzes that are 1 or 2 questions long, just so that your students can get a sense of what it is that they were supposed to get from the videos. And then it has the hands-on activities, which are the little pencils, which is what we're going to work on today. So if you have your iPad, please scan this QR code that's on your screen right now, and it will take you directly to the CodeHS the CodeHS link. Alternatively, Jenny has put in the chat the link to take us to the CodeHS interface, and that is codehs.com/HOC_Karel, spelled Karel. So I'll just give one more minute so that everyone can get on that interface. But as we're waiting for folks to get on the interface, does anyone have any questions for me so far?
I do. So this Code HS program, I was going to log into, like, so I have an account. So you obviously have to have account then to utilize this. Like if you were to actually teach it, no?
No, Kathy, so that's a fantastic question, right? So if you were to click either on the link or scan this QR code, it's open. So you do not need to have an account for these short 1 hour engagements with CodeHS. If you were doing a longer series where you had the same group of students coming back to you and you wanted to teach a little more in depth about coding, then you can definitely make an account. But for this one, the HOC and the link stands for Hour of Code. So CodeHS has a huge variety of Hour of Code sessions, and those you do not need an account for.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, so I trust that everyone is now on this link. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can share the CodeHS interface. All right, so this is what it should have brought you to. Once again, if you click play, that's the video. That gives you a little more in-depth instructions as to what I just explained. But I want to bring you down to the bottom ribbon here. And once again, here are the pencils, which is what we're going to start working on. So, okay, here we go. So this, once again, explains to you what your challenge is. So you do get started. So we're going to get started. Now, CodeHS, you could use one of two ways. You could drag these blocks so that your students are now working with block coding. Alternatively, if you see here where it says switch to code view, your more advanced students can instead type the commands, right? So move, for example, right? So they can type and get more practice with typing. Or you could go back to block view and then they can just drag over the blocks for our younger learners. And the way in which we run our code is we just hit run. So we have 3 move commands. So once again, from knowing that a move command is going to move Karel over one spot in the grid in the direction that Karel is facing. If we say move 3 times, then we would assume that Karel is going to move over 1, 2, and 3. So let's hit run and find out. And in fact, Karel did. However, the goal of our exercise is to finish with no balls on the screen, no tennis balls. So right now I had 3 commands, 3 move commands, which brought me here. Thinking, how can I get Karel over here in that spot? Then I would probably need to move 1 more over. All right, and what is that going to do for us? Great, so that gets us to the spot where Karel needs to be, but now we need to finish in a way where there are no balls on the screen. So I'm going to take my take ball command and utilize it and see what happens. Great, so I was able to do to complete the task, and right here it tells you, nice job, you got it, you did it, right? So we did what we were supposed to do. At first, it might seem a little simple, but as we get a little more into it, then it starts to get a little more complicated. Here is the next exercise, which is the short stack. So how do we go from the beginning to the ending, right? So I want to give you 2 minutes, and I want you to try this one on your own, using the block commands. So once again, try to go from here to here. All right. So I'll give everyone about 2 minutes, and then I want to come back and I would like for someone to volunteer and tell us what they did, so that we can all see how this particular exercise is It's done. All right, everyone. Um, was anyone able to get this code to work for them? And if so, would you be willing to volunteer and tell me which commands to put on our script box here to get Karel to go from here and finish over here? So at this point, this is where the students kind of get a little confused because there are two balls here. So what I often like to tell them is don't think of the whole problem as one whole problem. Think of the problem as a set of different steps and try to tackle one step at a time, right? So Karel is starting off over here, but I need to go two spaces over, right? So how do I even move one space over? So with the move command, we can move over, right? Okay, so am I getting closer now to this? Yes, a little bit. Here, what needs to happen? Well, Karel needs to put a ball, right? So we'll put ball, okay? And then what needs to happen? Now, Karel needs to move over once more. Okay, great. So now we've done this. The question is, does this look exactly like this? The answer there is no. What is the difference between what we have on the screen and what we're supposed to have on the screen? Well, there are supposed to be two balls here instead of one. So then if we go back and look at our code, we only put down one ball. So what we want to do is we want to take another put ball command and just place it in between. And now let's run it and see what happens. Great. So now we have our screen looking exactly like the exercise says, right? Karel is right here in this spot on the grid, which is where Karel needs to be. And there are two balls on the screen. There are two balls on the screen. And then we can continue to work on this with the make a tower exercise. And the make a tower exercise is a little bit more challenging because now Karel is once again starting on the bottom left, but Karel is finishing right on top of a tower, and Karel is also facing in this direction, facing to the right. So getting started, right? Once again, what is the first thing we should do? Well, Karel is standing right here at the bottom left, but Karel needs to be right over here. So how do we go from here to here? Well, the first thing I think Karel should do is move over one. Okay, so let's move over one. Okay, fantastic. So now we're here. What I also notice is that in this particular grid point, there is a tennis ball. So I would probably want to put down a tennis ball as well. We run it. Okay, great. This is now starting to look like this. Now Karel needs to go up. But remember, by saying move, Karel only moves one space over in the direction that Karel is facing. So if we want to go up, we want to get Karel to face up. So we're going to make Karel turn left. And now Karel is facing up. So now we can get Karel to move up. And once Karel is over here, we would want to put another ball again. And we're going to run it here. Now, this is also another thing that I like to do with my young learners is to little by little keep testing their code, even if it's not finished, so that they are able to catch mistakes faster that way instead of writing a lot of code and then not being able to figure out where the mistake is in their code. Okay, so this looks like I'm on the right path. What I would want to do now is go up another grid point and put another ball there. So I'm going to move, and I'm also going to put another ball. Okay, so let's see what's happening so far. Okay, so my question once again is, does this look exactly like this? Not quite. So Karel needs to finish right on top of this tower. So I would probably want to move up one more. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so this looks almost like what we're supposed to do, except that in our case, Karel is facing up, whereas in the exercise, our goal, Karel should be facing to the right. So remember, we want to finish exactly like this is. So we want Karel to now be facing to the right. The only command that Karel knows to turn in any way is the turn left. So let's see what happens if we do that again. Right now, Karel is facing up. So let's see what will happen if we do turn left again. Now Karel is facing backwards. Well, what if we turn left again? Let's see what happens then. Okay, so it would seem to me like I would need another turn left in order to get Karel to face to the right. Okay, great. So now this looks exactly like the exercise that we were supposed to complete, right? And as we go along the way here, as our code starts to get longer, this turtle and rabbit slider allows us to run the code either a lot slower, like this, or if we slide the slider closer to the rabbit, it runs the code a lot faster. All right. So once again, I like to tell my young learners to test their code a little bit at a time. Don't write the entire code all at once. Otherwise, there's a greater chance for error. And to once again, just try step by step, step by step. And that is really helpful in doing this next exercise, our pyramid, because there is a lot here, right? So now Karel is once again starting on the bottom left, but Karel will end all the way at the top right, facing to the right, with a pyramid of tennis balls on the screen. So oftentimes this looks intimidating to young coders, but what I try to tell them is, could you make just one row of tennis balls, right? How could we make a row of tennis balls? And then after we made one row of tennis balls, make a second row and then a third row so that it's not overwhelming. And so to do this one, and I want to go through it a little bit quickly so that I can tell you how in New Jersey we also use the Apple technology to run CodeHS. So we can start by putting down a ball right where Karel is. So put ball, right? Great. Then I want to make just the first row full of tennis balls. So I then want to go over to the next grid point and put a ball there as well. Okay, this is starting to look correct. So I want to finish now by moving over one more and putting down a ball. And what does that do for me? Great, now we have an entire first row of tennis balls. Now I want to go up and do the same thing. So this is where everybody is going to start doing things a little bit differently. You could go up and work backwards, or you could get Karel to go all the way back and move forward again. I'm just going to put Karel right up here and work backwards a little bit. So what I'm going to do is make Karel turn left so that Karel is facing up and move Karel up one. And now I'm here. Right here, it looks like I also need a tennis ball, so I'm just going to put a ball here. And now this is looking like this. I want to now go back and put a tennis ball right here in the center. So I need to get Karel to face backwards. So I learned from the last challenge that in order to turn backwards, I need to turn left once again. So now Karel should be facing backwards, right? Great. Now I'm going to move over once more and put a tennis ball there. And now I have 2 rows of tennis balls. Great. Now, what I want to do is I want to try and navigate Karel all the way up to the top right. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I want to get Karel to be facing to the right. So I'm going to use 2 more turn left commands so that now Karel is facing to the right. Great. Now I want to move over 1. So I'm going to say move. And once I'm here, I want to face up. So I'm going to do another turn left. Okay. So I'm making all my rows with tennis balls. Now I just want to go up, right? It looks like I just need to go up. So I'm going to move. And once I'm up there, I also want to put down another ball. So put ball. And it looks like this is right. We have the entire pyramid here, but this is telling us that Karel should be facing east. Karel should be facing to the right. Okay, so then the only thing that I now need to do is to get Karel, instead of facing up, to get Karel to turn to the right. And I learned from the last challenge that in order to do that, I need a few more turn left commands. So let's put 2 and see what happens. 2 turn left commands and see what happens here. It looks like I'm missing one more, right? So I'm going to put 1 more, and that should get me to the end. Great. So now this looks exactly like the challenge that we were supposed to complete. And these are the 4 challenges that we have for this hour of code. If your young learners are feeling like they want to be challenged a little more, then there is a make your own Karel program where they can get to design whatever figure they want on the screen in a much, much bigger canvas. So now if you notice, their canvas is way bigger. It has a lot more grid points, and Karel is starting off in the middle. And they can do whatever kind of design they want on this grid. Some folks, you will do the first letter of their name. Some folks will make a house, a flower, whatever it is that they want, now that they have a lot more practice using the 4 commands that Karel knows. So before I finish by letting everyone know how we use the Apple technology with Karel the dog and Hour of Code, does anyone have any questions on the actual interface or on the actual coding of Code HS? Okay, so here in New Jersey, we use Code HS in a variety of different ways. We've used it for school enrichment. So usually when we do school enrichment, those are 1-hour sessions, and the introduction, the hands-on activity, and the closing takes about an hour, right? And we usually do this with young learners in between 4th and 6th grade, and that's a good age range for this particular exercise. We've also done it in a larger scale with Science Saturday programs, about 60 students, each with their own iPad. And the way in which we use the iPads is, so a lot of you were able to access this website using the QR code. So with their iPads, they can open the camera, scan the QR code, which will bring them to this original, to the original site that we were on. Now, because they're using the iPad, they can easily drag the blocks with their fingers, right? And like I said, we can switch to code view. So the keyboard that comes with the casing with the iPads, they can use to actually write their own code as well. And like I said, this particular interface is accessible on just about any device that has access to the internet. So you could use it on a desktop computer, on a laptop, on an iPad, or even on a phone. So that's how we've incorporated Apple technology with CodeHS to bring computer science to our young learners. Are there any questions right now about using CodeHS, Karel the dog, or how you can implement CodeHS with your Apple technology on any of your programming?
Rodrigo, do you feel like this particular program is the kids like this more than like in comparison to everyone can code the puzzles?
It's very similar, right?
Right,
And um, what I personally like about it is that the scaffolding is built into CodeHS. When we run other software, I think we have to be more mindful about how we scaffold, right? But this the scaffolding comes already built in. So for younger learners, I like to use block coding. For more advanced learners, I like to use the script because then they can also focus on, for example, turn left, right? The L in turn left is capitalized, and that matters. So when
right.
typing it in, then it becomes more apparent, oh, this really matters, right? Or I have a room full of 20 students and someone's really not understanding, I can quickly point them to the video and say, hey, Tim, just watch this video really quick. And if you still don't understand it, come to me and I can help you a little more, right? So that I can
Okay.
focus on a few other students. And then if they don't understand, then yeah, I will help them. But that's what I mean. The scaffolding is built in here. So I think that as an educator, for me, this helps me out a lot more if I'm running a session by myself.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, that helps.
I
Thank
think
you.
the other thing that I found is what you do on the screen, you can then replicate with the Sphero robot. So, here we're coding Carol the dog, and then now we could code the Sphero robot, and they can see it in person
Mhm.
do that. So sometimes I'll do an on-screen coding lesson paired with a Sphero lesson that match, and then they're getting to see it in two different components. One is a character moving across the screen. One is a robotic ball moving across the floor, and they can kind of get that connection by doing them, together, or one week do one, and then the next week, replicate it with Sphero, and
Hmm.
then they kind of learned it both ways.
So then do you have a grid on the floor then that you've created, like sort of like the dots or
Yeah, you could replicate a grid or a maze on the floor. A lot of times we'll just use 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, different colors represent different things, and we put that down on the floor.
okay,
So different, yeah. Whether you can tape to the floor or not, you could use paper for that grid.
perfect. Thank you.
And folks, I know that we are coming up on the half hour, so we still have more time for Q&A, but what I would like for everyone now is if you could please scan this other different QR code just to get some feedback on the session and some information about where you folks are from, how you plan on implementing this. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. I'm going to stop recording now. And once again, we are available for more Q&A.